Prairie tonight.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen in the Northland. This is Paul Metsa. You're listening to Stars Over the Prairie. We got some great guests today. Because what do we do on Stars Over the Prairie? We interview stars, people that used to be stars, people that want to be stars, people that never been stars, people that just like to go outside at night holding a beer, looking at the stars. And we broadcast from the big KKDAL, 610 AM, 103.9 FM. We are 237 somersaults down the hill from Bob Dylan's childhood home and a stone's throw away from Bob Dylan Way. A stone's throw away from there, and you would be in the beautiful unsalted sea that we know and you know as Lake Superior. My guest today, in this order, we're going to be Chris David Hansen, who shared the stage with me last night. We had a big birthday bash. It was the 30th anniversary of my 39th birthday at Carmody's Pub. We'd like to thank Eddie and Liz Gleason for hosting us. We had a great night. It was a fundraiser for Animal Allies. We raised a nice chunk of change for the doggies and kitties. Animal Allies up there on the hill by the airport do a great job. You're looking for a dog or a cat, go up there, make an appointment, and check out the dogs. Or you love dog and cats, but you're already full at the house with your critters, go to animalallies.org and make a donation. They just do great work. I want to thank Nicole and her mother, Mary, who drew numbers from the hat. We had a bunch of door prizes that we gave out last night. Just had a wonderful time. Christopher David Hansen lives in Babbitt, Minnesota. He's got two little beautiful long-haired chihuahuas. Big Mac and Minnow, he took them along and strode them through the club. They were a major hit. We're going to listen to a song by Christopher. He's also a great guitar player. Then at the around 10:30 or so, we're going to talk to another man who shared the stage with us last night, Al Oikery. Al lives up in Chisholm now. He spent quite a bit of time, still does, up in Grand Marais, where he plays quite a bit, plays on the Iron Range, was one of the founding members of the Big Woo, had about a 30-year run with them. He's a phenomenal keyboard player. We've been playing together for a little over 40 years. We're going to play a song he played piano on, one of my songs called Virginia, towards 11 o'clock today. We're going to play a song, Kangaroo, by the Big Woo, that kind of shot them to jam band superstardom. At 11 o'clock, we're going to do we don't do a lot of politics on the show, but it's the election season, so we've got two of my favorite candidates. Jen Schultz is going to be right after the news at 11 o'clock. She's running for Minnesota District 8 for state rep against Pete Stauber, and then at 11:30, a man I've had the pleasure of knowing for several years. He is a retired judge. He's also an author. He's written several books. He runs his own publishing house, Cloquet River Press, and he is running for state rep in 3B. That would be Mr. Mark Munger. If you've driven around Duluth, you've seen the name Munger. There's Munger Trails, Munger Roads, Munger Railroad Tracks, Munger Bike Trails. We're going to find a little bit more about the Munger phenomenon when Mark joins us at about 11:30 this morning. Hey, if it is your birthday today, you are like me, a Scorpio. You're probably wondering what the year has in store for you. Well, in general, Scorpios today, it's very possible that you will want to take a step back today in order to take a closer look at your relationships. Your address book is full of names. Your phone rings off the hook. You receive tons of texts and emails every day. But are these people really your friends? Isn't it funny that you still feel alone at times? It's time to get rid of the superficial relationships and concentrate on those that really mean something to you. In my case, it would be my dog Blue, my foster dog Babel. Actually, I've got so many Facebook birthday messages yesterday. I was so proud to get one, my very first one, the day before. He was right on top of it. from Minnesota's first rock and roll star, Tony Andreessen, the lead guitar player for the Trashmen. I've gotten to know Tony over the years. I saw him perform at the Duluth Armory just a couple of months ago, and Tony's a spry 82, and I looked at him and I said, man, I hope I am rocking and singing as well as he is when I get to be that age. Now, if today's your birthday, November 2nd, here's what the year looks like for you. Your professional know-how could be on a downward trend. That's not good. As the next 2 to 3 weeks unfold, focus on what you know and don't try to outfox someone to make extra money. In late November and early December, your interests may shift as you dream of new possibilities or becoming enamored by a special someone. Consider finding inspiring places to visit. Escape on a vacation when you can visualize creative projects and plans. You might not be successful if you try to maneuver your way into bigger profits in late December or early January, but things are going to look up. It might be helpful to focus on spending more time with friends or join a group of people who share your interests. You may be vulnerable to wishful thinking in late January, so think twice before pursuing any new romantic enticements, and that includes tonight at the bar and offers that seem too good to be true. Famous birthdays today. Well, who's more famous than Daniel Boone? Excuse me. The American frontiersman. I was born in 1734 in Reading, Pennsylvania. Lived to be 1820. For those of you of a certain age, you might have got that coonskin cap popularized by Fess Parker when he played Daniel Boone on the TV set. Marie Antoinette, the Queen of France, was born in 1755. Passed away she was the queen until 1793. She was born in Vienna, Austria. Most notable for her quote, "Let them eat cake." Warren G. Harding, our 29th president of the United States, only served from 1921 to 1923. He died in office. He was then followed by Calvin Coolidge. Was born in 1865 in Blooming Grove, Ohio. That sounds like a beautiful place to be born. One of my favorite actors, Burt Lancaster, was born in 1913 in New York City. His famous movies From Here to Eternity, Elmer Gantry. If you want to get a feel for what's going on in modern politics, go back to that film, Elmer Gantry. It'll give you a good look into people you don't want to follow in politics. Of course, he was also in Field of Dreams, and it was in a great film with called Sweet Smell of Success back in the late 1950s. If you're a golfer, and I know we got a few golfers out there, Duke Scorch, I'm talking about you. Dave Stockton, who was 83 years old today, born in 41 in San Bernardino, California. He won 2 PGA championships, one in 1970 and one in 1976. And for you fans of the television show Friends, your guy, David Schwimmer, turned 58 years old today. He was born in Queens, New York. I believe we have our first guest on the air. Is a man that I've been listening to for, I think I got turned on him 10 or 15 years ago when I'd buzz up to the Iron Range and go see my friends play. I really love this guy's music. He's a great singer, great guitar player, and a big dog daddy of 2 little dogs, Minnow and Big Mac. He rocked the house last night at Carmony's Irish Pub, and he's got hopefully a couple cups of coffee in him, and because he drove down, then drove back to his little abode up there in Babbitt. But he's with us here this morning, Christopher David Hansen. Thanks so much for playing last night, brother.
Good morning, Paul, and happy birthday.
Thank you so much, man. Wasn't that fun last night?
It was a blast. I'm still high from it. You know how you get home and you got to like decompress before you go to bed?
Oh, yeah.
I'm still decompressing.
Yeah, well, I
slept a little bit.
Well, good. Well, you know, you had a long drive to and from, and we really appreciate you coming down. I don't have the final tally, but I believe we raised, several $100s anyway for Animal Allies. And I know you're a big dog daddy. Tell the people out there about Minnow and now your new one, Big Mac.
All right. Well, they're both with me right now. So Minnow and Big Mac are I call them Sound and Lights crew. They basically go with me everywhere.
Sound and Lights crew.
Right. Yeah, that's
your
how
roadies.
A lot of the places. Yeah, exactly. They're like, we don't allow dogs. I'm like, sorry, this is light and sound. So.
And they also manage me.
Yeah, right. Exactly. They really do. That's actually a very true statement. But yeah, I know they're two long-haired Chihuahuas. Minnow, I've had for, I don't know, she's 12 years old, and I don't know, it feels like I've been with her forever. Like, it's one of those, we had that soul link thing go on, and then she got a little older, and she'd been on the road with me, and I was like, it gets cold in the winter and hot in the summer, and I can't bring her on every, trip. So I was like, you get a puppy. So we got her a dog, and then all the rest of the animals and myself all fell in love with him. His name's Big Mac. It was Mackenzie, but it just turned into Big Mac. I really didn't want to name him after a cheeseburger. But
he's about the size of a cheeseburger.
He's about the size of a cheeseburger. When I go to shows and people don't remember his name, I just introduce him as Cheeseburger and Fish.
Well, they are really adorable dogs, and of course, they just sit. I saw you at Sir Ben's a couple of months ago, and you had Minnow with you in his little bed, and he just sits there. And I think that's you've got that Minnow bucket tip jar you carry around, and I think most of those tips are going because everybody loves Minnow. No, I'm not saying you're not a great musician, Hanson, but what a great way to trick people into giving you money because you got those adorable dogs with you. Hey, talk a little bit about where were you born, Chris, and how did you end up in northern Minnesota?
Oh, wow. I was talking to Jilly last night from the Reader.
Jellyfish are the best.
Yeah, she was like, where are you from? And I was like, I'm a Navy brat. So it's a complicated answer. But born in Maryland.
Whereabouts in Maryland? My sister lives in Frederick.
Well, it was the Patuxent Naval Base is where I was.
Okay.
That's what my birth certificate that I found says. And then we moved. I think we lived in Maryland for like maybe a year. And I do have one memory from that, but it was very traumatic. It was like my sister built a snowman or something for me, and some kids came and knocked it over. And I can remember that. My parents my whole life, they were like, you can't remember that? I'm like, I do, though. But anyway, I do, though. I remember them pushing my sister over and wrecking her snowman, and I did not like it at once.
Oh, well, I hope karma caught up to those little sons of guns.
Yeah, and then we moved to Texas, and I picked up a little Southern accent there, and at about, I don't know, kindergarten age, 6? Was that about 6, 5, something like that? We came back up here. My dad was originally from Ely Babbitt area. My mom from Two Harbors. So, and then work was tough, so we ended up living in the cities for a while. I went to Blaine, senior high, and then after all that was done, I played in bands down there, and then I moved up here, and I'm never going anywhere else.
Well, I saw you with, back then, God, it was about 7 or 8 years ago, with the Christopher David Hansen band, and you had our good friend, Brent Sari, on keyboards.
Yeah, I just talked to Brent yesterday. Him and I still talk all the time. Yeah, that was a fun band. We had, that was like seven-piece band.
Yeah, that was a great band. Who was that guitar player? He was a little older than you.
Carl Anderson.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic guitar player. Yeah, he's still around. I'm sure he's still playing. Yeah, he's fantastic.
So how many nights a year are you playing, Chris?
Oh, I'm doing about between 15 and 20 shows a month.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so, in that 150 to 200 show range a year.
Mm-hmm.
Some years it's a little more depending on what I got going on for a band. And actually, I've been doing the solo stuff a lot, and that has really picked up. I'm actually to the point where I'm a little tired and kind of want to hide for the winter.
Well, the beautiful thing about playing solo is when you get a check, you divide it by 1, and the same number on the left side of the check is the money you're going to be putting in the bank. That money doesn't change at all.
Right. Oh, yeah, no, it is. No complaints. It is a wonderful way to pay the bills. I would take playing music over punching into my other jobs any day,
Oh, yeah. What other jobs have you had over the years? We've all done them.
Yeah. And I've done a lot of like fun things, and I still will. I'll still pick up side jobs my whole life. I love that stuff. I love them. The one I just worked at the last couple of years was at Steger Mucklucks. I was sewing leather.
Oh, cool!
Making the Muckluck boots in Ely. Yeah, world famous Muckluck boots. That was super fun. Everybody there is it's like working at it's a family business.
Right.
And it really is.
Wasn't that Steger's ex-wife, right?
Yeah, Patty.
Yeah, Patty. Right. I was going to say Peggy. Patty. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so cool. Like one of the first days when I worked there, she brought in a slide projector and she showed some of the voyages that Will Steger and her had taken, and how she had learned how to make these mucklucks.
Wow.
So they brought her when they went on these voyages, and she was their seamstress.
Wow.
And so they go through all these villages, and they were all teaching her how to make all these boots and stuff, and that's how she did that. She got taught by, all these authentic people that knew how to make these boots, and yeah, it's really cool.
Have you met the man, Will Steger himself?
I briefly. Yep. It's Ely. Like, we've all met each other.
Yeah, right.
Like, we all, even if you don't know someone's last name, you've seen them in the grocery store. And,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we all know each other.
I just picked up 2 pasties from Zups a couple weeks ago. I was up there visiting my friend Jeff Cerniak, who lives outside of Ely. And,
I love Jeff.
Yeah, he's a great player, and I love those pasties, and I love that supermarket. But it's fun to just watch the people that all live in the bush up there, man. They're coming in, and you go, you got all kinds, and Ely's got its own vibe. Talk a little bit about, I've really been amazed, of course, you and I are both big fans and have played with Rich Mattson, but and then we know Doug Ellis, but there was, when I was coming of age in the 60s and then started to play in the 70s, there was a great music scene on the Iron Range, and then I moved to Minneapolis, so I lost track for 30 or 40 years. But it seems to me that there's a really vibrant music scene up there between Ely and Grand Rapids and all over the Iron Range. It is.
It's absolutely true. And original music.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt about it. Kind of amazed when I moved up here from the cities. And I'd been up here my whole life. We've had the land that I live on. I'm third generation. So, I was up here my whole life. But, I really wasn't in the music community until later in life. And holy smokes, people are writing songs up here. They are woodshedding, like some of the very best players I've ever heard. They're just, people have that time to woodshed up here.
Right.
They got that time to put in all that practice, and it shows. I remember being really amazed when I started to, because I was like, I got up here and I might have had a little bit of a, negative attitude, how am I going to find people to put a band together?
Right.
What am I going to do? And I was absolutely wrong. It was the absolute opposite. It was like there was this musicians coming out of the woodwork. I was like, I found my spot.
Yeah, no, I've every time I go up there, I'm truly amazed and happy that the tradition continues. Drop a couple names for us. Who should we be on the lookout for? People whose music you really enjoy.
Oh gosh. You're putting me on the spot, Paul. And I don't get out too much. That's the one thing about living way up here. But I don't know. I've been like you want local, or is the stuff that I've been checking out lately?
Yeah, either one, man. Either one.
Well, I've been checking out that Danny Donato, Cosmic Country. I don't know if you checked him out at all. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That is some good stuff. It's like if classic country and the Grateful Dead had a baby.
Yeah, no, I saw him on one of those jam band. I think it was after the great Phil Lesh passed away. I think he was playing in one of those jam band configurations where I saw him for the first time.
Yeah, it's just phenomenal. And then, I'm always stuck on my Gregory Alan Isaacoff thing. I can't really shake that. Once I find a musician I really like, I kind of go down that hole for it seems like about 3 years, something
Who was really the first musician that you said, man, I think I might want to do this for my life? Well, yeah.
Prince. I mean, because the funny thing is, my son asked me questions about this. He's a really good musician, lives out in L.A., Cameron Erickson, and he asked me all kinds of tips about singing because he's learning how to sing and he's getting better and better. And he's like, "How did you learn how to do the things you do?" And I was like, "Well, on my school bus dropped me off, I would on my way home every day. It was like a 20-minute walk. I would either sing Willie Nelson songs or Prince songs."
Yeah, that's a good combo.
Yeah, and he was like, "That's the combo." I'm like, "Yeah, those are the things I like. I like Prince and I like Willie."
and you busted out a replacement song last night.
Yeah, we played Waitress in the Sky, and we did some Emmylou Harris. We did Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain by Willie.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love your set list.
On some lead.
Oh, I enjoyed it, man. We got to play some more together. I really, we've hung out. You've heard me, I've heard you, but that was the first time we actually played together on stage. I had a ball.
Paul, you're a really good electric guitar player, and I say that because I'd never heard you play electric till last night.
I did quite a bit. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that because I love your guitar playing as well.
Yeah, I was like, you're giving off some real good Grateful Dead vibes on a lot of that stuff. It was head-turning good. I loved it.
Well, I've listened to a lot of... Jerry Garcia is one of my all-time favorite guitarists and human beings and musicians and songwriters.
Yeah.
Hey, Christopher David Hansen, we just got a few more minutes before we're going to play one of your songs and then get Al Oikri on the horn after it. What gigs do you got coming up?
I will be at Smoke on the Water in Coleraine, Minnesota this Tuesday from 6 until 8. And then on Thursday, I'll be on the North Shore at Grand Superior Lodge from 6 until 8. They have super good food. That's one of my favorite shows is that Grand Superior Lodge. It's kind of a house gig, and it's you'll get to hear music, but it's also kind of a spoken word. We sit and chat a lot.
Oh, cool.
We'll chat with the audience. We'll talk about some things, and the whole time we're chatting, I'm kind of looking at my set list going, well, what song fits this chat, right? And that's the kind of the gig it is, and it's really fun. It's such a fun gig that I would say half the time I forget to take my breaks.
That sounds like the kind of gig I would enjoy.
Exactly, yeah.
Christopher David Hansen, what's your website?
ChristopherDavidHansen.com.
And that's Hansen, S-O-N. Chris, it was great seeing you. Thanks so much for doing it for Animal Allies last night. We're going to play a song, Chris, is called Taking the Bottle to Bed, and then we'll have Al Oikri up, and then Jen Schultz and Mark Munger in the second hour of Stars of the Prairie. Chris, have a wonderful weekend, brother.
Thank you, Paul.
Left my job a little early today. I headed home, I made a stop on the way. I picked up a little bourbon and some lemonade. Oh, yeah, I got home, I found taking this bottle to bed. No, there ain't nobody home, no, no. So I'm drinking alone instead. Tonight I'm taking a bottle to bed.
If you're looking for a great hang in downtown Duluth, I highly suggest Carmody's Irish Pub. They're located at 308 East Superior Street, open Tuesday through Sunday. The host and hostess are Eddie and Liz. Eddie is a retired Chicago cop. If he happens to be in the club when you're there, talk to him. He's got more stories than I do. They've also got a great jam session every Tuesday night from 8 to 11 with Bruce Woodman. So if you're a musician, tried and true, that has been out there playing and just want to go try out some new stuff, go down and hang out with Bruce and the crew. Or if you're just up and coming, bring your horn or your stringed instrument or just want to sing, go sit in with Bruce Woodman every Tuesday night at Carmody's Pub, 308 East Superior Street.
I'm Zach, and I had Z LASIK at Weiss Eye Center. I was sick of wearing glasses. I've had glasses since third grade. Dealing with the nuisance of glasses has kind of reached that point of I just need to get LASIK. I was a little nervous, but knowing now what that process all entailed, I wouldn't have been nervous if I knew. Everybody's really nice here. Not a bad thing to say about anybody. Everybody's happy, and no, everybody here's nice. And I mean, it's day one post-op, and I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Weiss Eye Center is the only clinic to offer blade-free Z LASIK in the Northland. To find out more and to arrange your free consultation, call 218-625-1917 today or visit weisseyecenter.com for more information. Weiss Eye Center. See the best.
River City Records and Books, voted Best Record Store of 2023 in the Twin Ports by the Duluth Reader, has in stock thousands of new and used vinyl records, from classic rock to punk, grunge, and metal, to hip-hop, rap, and jazz, reggae, and dub. Thousands of books, CDs, DVDs, Blu-ray, and VHS. Also a large selection of cassettes, comic books, and music magazines. Stop in and see them at 1814 West Superior Street in the friendly Lincoln Park Craft District. Open 9 to 7, 7 days a week.
You're listening to Stars Over the Prairie with Paul Metsa. The phone lines are open. 218-722-0839.
Welcome back to Stars Over the Prairie. This is your host, Paul Metsa. Hope you enjoyed that little clip of Christopher David Hansen doing his original song, Taking the Bottle to Bed. Next up, another guy that I've been playing with for over 40 years. He joined us last night at Carmody's Irish Pub for my birthday fundraiser for Animal Allies. He's known as a keyboard player, but he's an incredible lap steel player, great Telecaster finger picker, slide player, and more, arranger and composer. He's played one of the favorite keyboard players of a lot of us, held forth with the Big Woo for, I believe, almost 30 years. We rousted him out of bed up there in Chisholm, Minnesota. He's already chopped a cord of wood and ran a mile. He's a jogger, and we've got him on the line. Mr. Al Oikri. Al, how are you this morning?
Well, I haven't jogged in a while, but yeah, that's okay. You've been known to bend the truth on occasion, but thanks for doing that on my behalf.
Al, us Finlanders have to stay behind one another and protect and serve our fellow Finns.
Yes, and we have to support the Norwegians and the Swedes for all their shortcomings. So, yes. We'll do all the work while they lounge next to the lakeshore.
Great. I'm going to just, hey, Tyler, I think our guest Jen is at the door. We're just a two-man operation here on Stars Over the Prairie. Hey, Al, tell us a little bit about, was your grandfather a musician? or grandmother?
Yeah, it was. Well, it turned out there was some music on both sides of the family. My dad's father was I believe his mother had given piano lessons many years ago in the Chisholm area, but my grandfather was the oldest of three brothers, and he played piano and he played accordion, and he and his father built a foot-operated drum kit. And during the Depression, he used to hop trains and go all over the place playing Polish weddings and whatever other gatherings he could find when times were tight and he was trying to scratch for money. And so he played quite often and also legitimate gigs, but I think perhaps he did some under-the-radar events during Prohibition.
Sure.
We'll just leave it at that. And but I've actually got an old black and white photo. It was a promo shot of him dressed up in a suit with his arms folded up over his accordion, and it was professionally shot at a studio, and that's one of my proud possessions. So there was certainly music coming from that side of the family. I have early memories of him coming up, he and Grandma coming up to visit us and rolling up his sleeves and going one or two rounds on the piano just to air it out. So fond memories of that.
You know, it's funny. I think all Finlanders have a grandfather that played accordion. My grandpa used to play, not professionally, but he did play at dances, and he used to, the Metsa homestead was in Angora, Minnesota. He used to actually walk through the woods. Grandpa used to tell me he'd go sometimes, a couple of miles through the woods in the winter to play dances for 25 cents, for a quarter. Well, you and I are making a little more than that, but over the years, it probably is close to a quarter with just the way the whole money thing works. So when did you start playing? Because I remember you were the first time I saw Al Oikri was with Scarlet, which was kind of, I don't want to say a hair metal band. How would you describe Scarlet?
It was kind of a strange mixture. There were a pair of members from two different bands coming from two different angles that jammed together to form that band. Dave Mackey and Mike Lemieux were both from the east end of the range, and they were playing at the time in a band called Skylar, and I think
Skylar, right?
And they had worked in other bands prior to that. And I was playing. I was in college, the first go round in college, and I was playing mainly with some Hibbing guys, and Rick Spoler turned out to be our drummer. He was making the trip out to the Central Range to play with us, and for a short period of time we were in a band called Cobra, and we were doing more Robin Trower-based things, and then more American, type rock, basic rock. Aerosmith, that sort of thing. Dave Mackey was more of a melodic thing, and he was really entranced with more of the English pop harmonies. Of course, he was a huge Beatles fan, and so it was kind of a mixture of grit and polish, and I guess the two go hand in hand. But Dave came from a polished side where he had to be well rehearsed, but he was just brilliant. The tones he could get out of his guitar. He was in complete control of his guitar playing and his guitar tone. Plus, he could sing like a bird on top of that. He could do both simultaneously, and I was always in awe of people who could do that. He was just he was a huge talent. He was a genius, and it was a privilege for me to work with somebody like that, because if you have a good rhythm section, the keyboards and the guitars lay on top of that. And Dave was just a great person for me to feed off of, and the two of us really blended well together. And there were great memories for me. They were legitimate musicians, and I was excited to be working with them.
Plus, Mackey was like stupidly cute. I mean, you couldn't have got a better looking frontman in a band than Dave Mackey. I remember He had those cute little blue eyes, and you'd go see him at dances, and all the girls would just sit up, and they didn't pay attention to any of you other guys in the band. But Dave was the rock star, but a great guitarist too, and a sweet guy.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, my experience with him, while the girls may have been, enamored with him, he was with a long-term girlfriend/wife. It became his wife, and Peggy. And I don't know what her maiden name was. I believe she was originally from Ely, but they had a real solid relationship back then. And as a matter of fact, when Scarlett was winding down, we were all living in Canada, and Peggy became pregnant with her first child, and she was a little concerned about the direction that particular band was going. We were based out of Winnipeg by then, and the agency was busy trying to turn us into a pretty boy band, where Dave and I just wanted to get in the studio. The studio was our sandbox, and we wanted to write and create, and we were also attracted to progressive rock, things that were fun to play and showed some musicianship and some complexity, but from the agency standpoint might not be a selling point, for them.
Sure.
They're working on commission, and, their target audience wanted an attractive pretty boy band. They were coming out to see us anyway, just because of the curiosity of us being Yanks, coming up from across the border to work. We had all the immigration, the work permits and the equipment manifests and that sort of thing, contracts, everything was above the table, and the agency taught us how to do that sort of thing. So we went to the immigration office and the taxman every week. And so it was a legitimate operation, but what the agency was turning us into, when Dave's wife became pregnant, she tapped him on the shoulder and said, you're in the Navy, your GI Bill isn't going to be valid much longer, so if you were to put that to use to go to school, now would be the time. We've got a baby on the way.
Right.
And so Dave announced his departure, and he bowed out to enroll for, I think, electronics technician or something. And he ended up, he and Peggy ended up going out to California, and he worked for Sony, and I think it was the facility that was making Trinitron televisions at the time. So his son, his firstborn, was born in the Virginia Eveleth area before they moved out there. So I had a chance to hold the little one, and I've got a few snaps of that. So Christian was his son, and so that was a treat. That I was able to see the fruits of his labor, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, let's move ahead here 40-some years and listen to a little bit of a song called Kangaroo. One of the songs when you were with the Big Boo that kind of really shot you up the charts in the jam band world. We'll listen to a little bit of that, and then we'll be back with Al Oikry for the rest of the hour. And then I'm very excited, who just entered the studio for 11:05. We will be talking with the wonderful Jen Schultz, who is kicking butt on the campaign trail.
Kangaroo, I'm betting on the off track, on the off chance you left the outback. My kangaroo, kangaroo, jackrabbit in a bushwhack, decided to give you your bounce back. My kangaroo, kangaroo, it ain't so hard for you to bounce in my backyard. You can sail the ocean blue, my kangaroo, my kangaroo. Kangaroo, you mean more to me than just another wallaby. My kangaroo, kangaroo, I read it in the books that say your country was settled by crooks, and it's okay, my kangaroo. Kangaroo, it ain't so hard for you to bounce in my backyard. You can sail the ocean blue, my kangaroo, my kangaroo.
I'll let him play a little more piano here. Oh, yeah, and that man tickling the ivories on that Big Woo song called Kangaroo was our guest and my old buddy Al Oikry. Al, how did you, when did the whole thing with you in the Big Woo start? Were you an original member, or did you come in kind of after they were formed?
Pardon me, I missed that.
Oh, I said, when did you become a part of the Big Woo?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, it was accidental, actually. I had a day job in the Normandale area. I was in the Twin Cities, and I was working in a research group for Seagate. And I think there was a band called the Space Heaters that had a weekly gig Thursday nights, I think, in a place called the Five Corners.
Oh yeah, I did 200. I did two. Go ahead.
I was going to say Pete Sandvik.
Good buddy of mine.
Yeah. He used to come see us play at the Union Bar back in the day, if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
He used to come see the Cats. We used to talk shop. I talked him into buying a DX7, I think. So way back in the day, I think I had one. Anyway, Pete Sandvik was their normal keyboard player, and I think they were off. He was away at an accordion convention or something.
Yeah, he's a good accordion player.
Yeah, he's not even a Finlander, but
we'll let him into the club.
Yeah, I think he was involved in maybe the sales and repair. I think maybe he's an accordion repair technician.
He is that.
Yeah, and that's kind of a dying breed. That's a specialty thing. Not too many people do that, and he's one of the few. At any rate, he was gone, and the Space Heaters knew of me from somewhere, and somebody gave me a call and asked me if I could sit in, and I did. And I didn't know a lot of the material. A lot of it was Grateful Dead based, and I really wasn't schooled on the Dead, but I had fairly good ears, and I could hear the progression and follow along. But at any rate, two things combined to get me into the Woo. Number one, they also had a revolving door at drummer where Mike Hurley and Terry Vanderwalker would rotate.
Yeah, I knew. Mike and I played together.
Yeah, in the drum position, and then a fellow named Paul Hagen, who was a old school Deadhead taper guy. He had invested quite heavily in preamps and taping gear and microphones, and so he religiously taped all of the Space Heaters show, and being a Grateful Dead fan, and he would post these things, or it may have even been before the internet. He used to convert them to cassettes, and then there was this tape trading phenomenon that was going on, so a lot of the music was being spread that way, and then throughout some of the other Grateful Dead fan network. And anyway, when I sat in, at the end of the night, he looked at me with wide eyes like I was a Martian. He was wondering what planet I came from. And he got my contact info, and I didn't really want to deal with anything else. And he said there were some young guys that were playing a weekly gig at the Terminal Bar, another place in Northeast.
Sure.
Didn't have a keyboard player, and they played on Tuesdays, and they were just starting, and he said that I should show up once with a keyboard and see what happens. I really didn't want to, but he kept calling and pestering, and so one day I showed on a Tuesday, and I'm about 15 years older than the rest of the guys, so they found out I was coming, and they were a little, apprehensive about it. I hobbled in with a keyboard underneath one arm and a crutch in the other one because I was in a softball mishap earlier in the previous week, and so I had a bum ankle, so I hobbled in there. They're wondering who this old guy was, and so they gave me a glance at the set list, and it said, well, just see which one of these you know, and I didn't recognize a lot of the titles. There was some Bob Dylan. A couple of songs sprinkled in, and some Allman Brothers things, and they said, well, why don't you just sit and listen, for a set, and then set up and play the second set? And I said, well, it's a Tuesday night, I've got to work early in the morning on Wednesday. I just soon play early, and why don't I just play a few? Tell me what key it's in, we'll see what happens. And short story made very long, but I ended up playing the whole night. They wouldn't let me off the stage, and things went pretty well. There may have been a couple of subtle train wrecks where I didn't know some bridge sections or some time signature flips, but it's the old Nashville thing: when in doubt, lay out, and I was smart enough to do that, and so it worked out pretty well. And I didn't join the band right away, but they kept calling, especially Paul Hagen, and I showed up a little more often, and pretty soon I just kept showing up, and before you know it, the weekly gig at the Terminal turned into a weekly gig at the Caboose. I think I played with them for the first time in early June of '96. And by September of '96, it moved to the Caboose. It grew that quickly. I can't say that I was the cause of it. They were getting they were mainly a cover band. I think they only had about 3 or 4 originals that they were fooling around with. But I think the fact that Jerry had passed away, Jerry Garcia, Grateful Dead, had passed away months before, there was a community of Grateful Dead fans that were looking for a place to mourn, really, and to still enjoy the music and put on their tie-dyes and celebrate and dance. And Space Heaters, obviously, were another outlet for them, but they started gravitating towards this young band that was playing in the Terminal, and the crowd grew enough where we had to move the operation over to the Caboose.
Well, I didn't realize that I'd started at the Terminal. It's right around the corner from my place in Northeast. And what I say about the Terminal is, I said there was never a bar that's been more aptly named than the Terminal. Al, we just got a few more minutes. So how long were you with the Big Woo? Do you still play with them?
Yeah, they're not playing as often, and I ended up going down for a couple of instances. Too much information, I guess. But I had a brain seizure in 2016 that put me out of commission for a while, and so they needed a substitute for me. And I think years before that, was it 2009, I had a tib-fib fracture. I had a slip and fall on an icy sidewalk.
We could do a whole hour on just your medical problems. So.
Yeah. I mean, nobody wants to insure me anymore, but I've got extra splints in my dresser drawers and crutches and foot cast galore. But anyway, when I was out, I had surgery on my leg. They had to rebuild my leg. They needed to get a couple of local guys in the fold to learn the book and be able to cover the gigs that they had. And same thing happened when I broke my right arm. They had to put that.
I don't mean to laugh.
I'm titanium, man. So anyway, they've covered a few gigs without me. So I'm in a spot where I'm cherry picking a bit. To drive down to the cities and back, or to drive to Illinois and back for a one-off, just isn't practical. When I was living in the Twin Cities, it was more feasible. I was working, in research and development in the high-tech field for a number of years, and it was a little easier for me to do these one-offs on the weekend. But driving from northern Minnesota is just a little tougher. So I take what I can, and the ones that I can't, they've got some people that they can rotate in as needed. So yeah. I'm probably playing, maybe half a dozen times with them per year. I don't think there's any more. I keep telling them to, if they ever fire up the tour bus again, save a seat for me, because I absolutely love traveling and touring, and it just makes practical sense to, play a number of shows in a row rather than driving down for one-offs.
Well, Al Oikre, I love having you up in northern Minnesota because we've been able to play together several times over the last year or two since I moved to Duluth. And we want to wish you well. Thanks again for playing last night for my birthday and for the Animal Allies fundraiser. You and I are going to do a project, get it together soon. We've been talking about that. Here's the very first time Al and I recorded. My first record, Paper Tigers, came out 40 years ago in October. And this is Al playing keyboards on my song, Virginia. Al, have a wonderful weekend, man, and thanks for the stories.
Okay, you bet. Thanks. We'll talk again soon.
Okay, brother.
Yep, bye.
They burned down all the trees on Fifth Avenue, shot out the fireball light. Nobody's on the beat going 2 by 2. Nighthawks out running in the night. Black dresses broke, but the train tracks that still go downtown. Plug nickel accordion band. Kissing boys, kissing girls on the Hooter Road. Jack Rabbit kicked the can. Jack Rabbit kicked the can. Virginia, Virginia, don't even know my name. Virginia, Virginia, nothing changes but you don't feel the same. Nothing changes but you don't feel the same. Nothing changes but you don't feel the same. Pinfall teardrops, rope for the meter man. Pool hall police play monthly peg. Horseshoe hopes on loan from the bleeding hand. 4 scores later, just like Lincoln said. Boris the Jippo used to tell me Russian fairy tales in a blackwood sky, no satellite.
For more than 80 years, KDAL. It Stars Over the Prairie with 8-time Minnesota Music Award-winning songwriter, musician, author, and historian, Paul Metsa. Check out previous show podcasts at KDAL610.com. Now, here's Paul Metsa.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Stars Over the Prairie. This is Paul Metsa, and I am so happy to have a woman who I've supported. We've done 2 or 3 events together. I've provided the musical accompaniment for her while she gives her... She gives what she wants to get done and raises a few bucks because these elections aren't cheap. But Jen Schultz is sitting right next to me, and she's running for House District 8 as a state rep. And she's got a bit of history in politics. And Jen, tell us a little bit about when did you get into the whole world of politics, and what was your first position politically?
So it was never on my bucket list to be a politician, but I teach economics at UMD, and for the last 20 years have been working on healthcare policy. And I was working with the current state legislator from Duluth, Tom Huntley, and he had decided to retire after 22 years. And so I was asked to run by several people. I found out about his retirement at an Education Minnesota event. So I got I got elected in 2014 and started as a state legislator in 2015. So I did that for 8 years through the pandemic, worked a lot on healthcare reform, and decided to retire after 8 years because in Minnesota, being a state legislator is a part-time job. And I thought 8 years was long enough, and it was time for someone else. But no one was challenging our current congressman. So I decided to get into that race in 2022 fairly late, and now we're running for U.S. Congress. And in District 8 again this year. And so it was, like I said, I never ever planned on doing this in my life. Some things just happen, and sometimes you just got to step up to do what you think is right.
What was your upbringing politically? When did you kind of become, aware of politics in general?
In the 70s, my mom, as a young mom, she ran for a county clerk position in the 70s when it was, at that time, women had a hard time even getting a car loan or a mortgage or a credit card in their own name. So
it's hard to believe, right?
She was really active in the women's movement and getting more rights so she could be more independent. So I think she really taught me how to engage and fight for things, for our rights. And that, I remember being fairly young and advocating for different candidates and working on different candidates' campaigns. I never thought I would be the candidate. So I think my mother really led the way in activism and organization, and she really organized a lot of people, and I learned from that. So, I mean, my mother was very politically engaged, and of course, she's very proud of me to be doing
she's
this.
Still with us.
Yeah, and she is, and she's, I was a very shy, introverted child, and so for me to be stepping out like this, she's very impressed with what I've done politically and how I've really helped a lot of people in our community and state.
And what was your hometown? Where did you grow up?
So my grandfather came over from Holland at age 14. He lost his mother. He came with some siblings and his father. They were very poor. And it was interesting, your last guest talked about playing the accordion. He played the accordion and the harmonica, and he constantly whistled all the time. But he was a carpenter. Cool. He was a carpenter, so he was an apprentice in Holland. He came over, and he was always in his workshop building furniture. He didn't make a lot of money on it. They were also dairy farmers. Mm-hmm. They were very poor, but they had a large Catholic family in rural Wisconsin, in Marshfield. So that's where I was born, but spent a lot of my time in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin.
Sure.
But came over to Minnesota. Home of Leinenkugels. Yes, that's what it was known for. It was fun to grow up in a small town like that, and you really realize how important it is that your neighbors and everyone. I remember even my grandparents were so reliant on neighbors to help them out. They lost, I lost an uncle. They lost a child, their first son, and the hospital bills were very expensive. So I remember them telling me stories about how all the neighbors chipped in and helped them pay off those hospital bills. But I've lived most of my life in Minnesota now, and I've been in Duluth for over 20 years, raising my family here. I love Minnesota. And I'm so proud of the work that we did at the state the 8 years I was in office.
What sort of things did you accomplish that you're proud of?
Yeah, so I took on big corporate interests often, but as an economist, I served on the tax committee, and I only worked in a divided government, so no one party had complete control. So most of my bills had bipartisan support. I worked with Republicans. I came in the minority in the House my first term, and the very first bill I worked on was a Republican bill on expanding coverage for telehealth medical services, which I knew was really important for rural Minnesota. And I think I was the only Democrat on that bill, but that was, I even went to the Republican press conference as the only Democrat. It was really interesting, but I didn't really care about party affiliation. I wanted to do what was right for people, really. If there was a third party like the People Party, that would be my party. But yeah, we did that and closed corporate tax loopholes. I expanded wages for personal care assistants so people could stay in their home longer rather than having to transition to a nursing facility. Got every single project funded for my district, including an all-cash project for the new hospital and the medical district in Duluth. And that was a year we didn't have a bonding bill, which is what you do in a non-budget year like this year, and Republicans refused to put up votes for it like they did this year, which was really unfortunate. So I tucked that project into the tax bill and got it done. Well, I learned a lot of strategy from our Iron Rangers.
Well, I was I knew the great Tommy Brookavina for years. He went to school with my sister, and I got to know him when he was on the school board with my father. So I've known Tom, may he rest in peace, since late 60s, early 70s. I played his 40th birthday party, and he invited me. I played several when he threw the Iron Range party for the state legislators down at the state capitol one year, Mancini's another year. I always was amazed at how well he got along with Republicans, because there was no more diehard Democrat than Tommy Brookavina. In fact, they used to call him Tommy the Commie. But he was really talk about crossing the aisle. I think Tom was a great example. It was just fun to watch him work the room at those events.
Yeah, I mean, they knew, just like I learned very quickly, it's all about building those relationships to get stuff done for your community. That's who you're serving. You're serving your community, not a political party and the people there. And I think Brookavina really knew that well and did a great job. He was very feisty, and I remember watching and listening to his floor speeches, which were always entertaining.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So we need more folks who put people first. That's for sure.
He was a really wonderful human being, and dedicated so much of his life to the Iron Range, and and a really funny guy too. A great guy to have a beer with. Jen, now what is District 8? That's a big district. Talk about how much geographically what that entails.
Yeah, it has gotten larger after the last census. So now it's the size of the state of West Virginia.
Wow.
It goes all the way up to Lake of the Woods, the bump out. It includes Monoman County and Beltrami, Bemidji, Brainerd Lakes area, and then it goes all the way to north of Stillwater. So it has 2 precincts in Stillwater Township, and then it comes all the way up the North Shore, St. Louis County, Lake and Cook, and I live in Duluth. So it's a very large district. It has the northern exurbs. It has, larger cities and small towns and a ton of townships, but it includes 21 counties, so it's very big.
I give so much credit. Well, number one, just when you were working, in the state legislature, just going down from Duluth to the state capitol, weekly, just that takes a certain amount of time. Now I've watched you, I've watched your 22 campaign, and now, like I said, done a few events here in 2024, and then I follow you on Twitter and your Facebook page, and you've got your driver, the lovely Alyssa, over here, but you are working hard. I mean, you got to be doing 12, 16-hour days every day, just campaigning. And you're a mother, and you're still working. My God, where do you get all the energy?
I don't know. I think I was born with all this energy, because for the longest time I didn't even drink coffee, and now maybe I have like a fourth of a cup of coffee, and I water it down because my husband makes it really too strong for me. Cup. My grandparents always drank very weak coffee, and so I don't really need a lot of caffeine to keep me going, but we do. I wake up every morning and we campaign full time all day into the evening every day, and that's what you have to do to reach this people in this large district. You got to show up. So I put on over 70,000 miles just on my car alone.
That doesn't
include all the miles my staff drive around to do the field organizing and grassroots efforts and getting out the vote. But for just me alone, it's over 70,000 miles. We've had over 50 plus very public meet and greets that we're trying to get, meet as many people and listen as much as possible. I have a to-do list, and I'm starting to figure out what do we need to help these communities thrive and working families thrive. And so I've got this long list, and that's when you don't understand how to solve problems unless you show up and listen and figure out what people need. And that's what we've been doing for this campaign cycle. And, we were in 34 parades. That was a lot of parades. Even though there are a lot more than that, a lot of them are on the same day, especially on the 4th of July. But to show up in places like Floodwood, the really small towns, they're really grateful, and it really stands out. And it shows people that their elected representative cares about them and is willing to come to their community to celebrate whatever community celebration. We've been to a lot. But, the role of a representative is to be a cheerleader for their district and let other people know what's happening in the district and all the great things, and just be a champion for the district to bring back resources. And we have so much beauty and so many things to offer folks in this district, and people just don't know about it.
Now, what are your priorities if elected?
Yeah, I get this question a lot, but the first thing you do as a representative is really to build those relationships, and that's how you get any legislation passed. So that is the number one priority. And then number two, we have to get money out of politics. They've spent this cycle alone total for this country $10 billion on campaigns. We cannot be spending that money. Could go to so many other things in this country. It is a waste of money, and it is too powerful, and it's, I think, really hurting our democracy when we spend this money. And I wouldn't be able to pass legislation to go after corporate greed of the pharmaceutical companies, for instance, without getting that money out of politics. So that's what we need to do: repeal Citizens United and make sure that our elected officials aren't taking kickbacks or gaining financially from owning stocks based on what they know. We just have to have way more disclosure and transparency for our elected officials. But and then we need to help working families. A lot of our working families are struggling. I'm from a lower income family. I know that my family struggled to pay the bills. My mom raised me and my sister as a single mom, and we didn't really get into the lower middle class until my mom finished college and got a teaching and job as an alcohol and drug abuse counselor. The gas prices, the average distance for people in the 8th District to drive to work is 25 miles. So it really disproportionately hurts people in rural areas when we have high gas prices. Those prices are coming down now. Inflation is coming down from the supply issues we've had, but we still have a lot of concentrated markets, egg, grocery industry, and when there's no competition, they can increase prices and make a lot in profit. So we have to make sure that we have more antitrust review and regulation. And I'm encouraged to see the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, strengthening their antitrust guidelines, and that will help working families. But they're struggling to pay for housing. We need way more affordable housing in the district. We have to increase supply. We have to get serious about it. Child care, don't have enough child care. It's expensive. We need to fix that problem. And healthcare. People are worried that our hospitals in rural areas are struggling. We need to make sure that they thrive and they offer all of the services that people need. And that helps bring employers to these communities because they look for good schools, healthcare, and affordable housing. And so I know in some communities they're worried about their schools going to 4 days a week or busing their kids to another community a long distance. I remember having long bus rides since I lived in a rural area, and we want to keep all of our schools in the communities open and thriving, and we need more federal help to do that. But we also have a lot of people in this district, older population, very dependent on Social Security and Medicare, and we need to strengthen those programs. I'm very afraid of what might happen, depending on who's president, that they go after those programs because those are the largest pieces of the budget, federal budget.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've been paying in for 40 years. I finally started to collect a couple years ago, and my quality of life, which I'm not a superstar or rich, but it's that Social Security check that keeps my life in perfect balance. You know, so I totally get it. Now, when you said healthcare, let's talk about reproductive freedom because that is so important. People think, Planned Parenthood and abortion, that's all it is. But Planned Parenthood does a lot of other great things for women's health. What is your take on all of that? I mean, I imagine I know what you're going to say, but lay it out for the people why reproductive health is so important to women.
Well, I think it should be more important to not just women, but really everybody.
Yeah, that's true.
I know I've met a lot of young men that don't want to become dads when they're 18 years old. So Planned Parenthood is important. They provide a lot of services for reproductive health and for preventing unwanted pregnancies. Just providing contraceptives is really important.
Right.
So, and health in general. So we need to make sure that we don't go back 50 years like other states. It's putting women's lives in jeopardy because physicians are afraid they're going to be prosecuted for providing necessary health care to protect the life of the woman. And I've just read about another young woman dying because she had sepsis and the hospitals would not provide the care she needed. And we can't go back to before Roe v. Wade. We just cannot. Abortions are going to happen. They'll just happen illegally, and more women will die. And we have physicians moving to Minnesota from states like Iowa because they're afraid to practice OBGYNs. But we can't have different states. It shouldn't depend on your zip code or state on getting the health care you need.
Right.
We just can't allow that to happen. It really harms especially low-income women, especially that can't drive or get to another state. And if that happens nationally, it's going to impact low-income women. Other women that might need an abortion, they can fly to another country. But low-income families can't do that, and it's going to affect them. But we have to put women's lives first and allow them to have the medical care that they need to protect them.
Well, and the whole concept of no exceptions for rape or incest burns me to no end. It just...
But, Paul, we talk a lot about this, and it can be very divisive, abortion access. We have very underfunded women's health care research. And I think that the easy solution is just to come up with the science to prevent all unwanted pregnancies.
Right.
I mean, we can make some contraceptives that are more effective than the birth control pill or the condom. So I'm just saying we got to put in the money to women's health research and men's health research to figure out how can we get to a place in society where we don't need abortion for unwanted pregnancies. But we're just preventing it 100%.
Well, it blows my mind that there are some Republicans that are talking about banning birth control.
Yeah, my opponent supported a bill to ban access to birth control. That is atrocious. I mean, I don't even know what's motivating someone to do that, but a lot of people don't know that there was legislation introduced and that a lot of Republicans voted against access to birth control. So if people hear that, I think it's so remarkable that they don't believe it, but it's true.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about the differences with Pete Stauber. Jen Schultz, Pete Stauber. What are the main differences you want? This is why we should vote for you. Yeah,
so, he is anti-choice, anti-birth control. He even sponsored a bill to make it impossible to get IVF treatment for people who want to start a family. But he's been in office for 6 years, and I worked with him when he was a St. Louis County Commissioner. I was a Great Lakes Commissioner, interacted a lot with him when he was in Congress. And I thought he would be a great moderate representative, working hard for us. But it turns out in the last 6 years, he has accomplished very, very little. It's unfortunate. And instead of being a moderate, he's an extremist. And he, when you watch him in committee hearings and he goes after cabinet members that we need to get grant money from for like infrastructure, he is destroying relationships instead of building relationships. And he's only passed 2 of his bills into law. He named a post office and he created a task force. So, we're used to folks like Jim Oberstar and the late Rick Nolan, and they did a lot for our district.
Say a little bit about Rick Nolan, because my nephew, Jordan, worked with him for 6 years, was his press secretary in his last year when he was in D.C. I met Rick several times. He couldn't have been a sweeter guy.
Oh, my God. Everyone loved Rick Nolan. And he was a U.S. representative in the early 70s for 3 terms, or 2-year terms. And then he went and left Congress and started some businesses and got very involved in his community in the Brainerd Lakes area. And then he came back in the 2000s and served another few terms in Congress. And he just his whole life he was a public servant. Really, he cared so much about our communities, and he was one of the most effective members of Congress. That's what he was known for. They looked at all of his legislation, and he worked across the aisle. And he cared, and I remember campaigning with him when I first ran as a legislator. He would show up. He would take his RV all around the district, going everywhere, listening to folks. He was a master at retail politics. He had wonderful speeches, very energetic. So it was great to learn from him. But his father gave him advice, and then he shared it with me. But he said, always look out for the little guy, because the rich and powerful have a way of taking care of themselves. So
that is for sure, and that is good way to end this interview, Jen Schultz. I know you guys were on your way to, what's your next move here today?
We're kicking off a door knock in Cloquet, and then one in Duluth, and then one in Bemidji. So we are getting out the vote because we know that when we vote, we win, and we hope everyone votes on or before Tuesday.
Well, good luck with everything. You know I'm a supporter, and I just want to congratulate anybody that's involved, whatever side of the aisle or the ballot they're running on. I know, my father was a politician. My nephew was a politician. I know how hard all of you work. So thanks for doing the good work for our democracy.
Yeah, thanks, Paul, for having me on.
Jen Schultz, thank
Bye-bye.
you. All right, go to JenSchultzForCongress.com.
Yep, JenSchultzForCongress.com for more info.
All right, we're going to play a song of mine. This is, I wrote 1993, called Walking in a Woman's World, and then we're going to wait for Mr. Mark Munger to join us to talk what he's been up to with his campaign.
It's called Walking in a Woman's World. 1, 2, 3, 4. Kitty Genovese was walking home one night. Stranger on Queens Boulevard asked her for a light. She said no, and he struck her down. As 38 looked on, now those 38 still hear her cry, since Kitty has passed on. She ain't safe in a straight line. She ain't safe on the ground. She ain't safe on an airplane. She ain't safe on the ground. Because my grandma was once just a girl. And I won't stop running till I'm walking in a woman's world. Karen came home from college with stories of where she's been. In this town 10 years ago, she was a homecoming queen. We won't hear those stories now or meet her boyfriend Dave. It was a short walk from the coffee shop to the shallow grave. She ain't safe in a straight line. She ain't safe in a round. She ain't safe on an airplane. She ain't safe on the ground. Because my grandma was once just a girl. And I won't stop running till I'm walking in a woman's world. Little girls on the playground, she dreams of going up. She might be a fireman, a princess or a cop. Let her be what she wants to be. Let her not pretend. Let her be a king or queen or the next president. She ain't safe in a straight line. She ain't safe in the round. She ain't safe on an airplane. She ain't safe on the ground. 'Cause my grandma was once just a girl. And I won't stop running till I'm walking in a woman's world. I won't
River City Records and Books, voted Best Record Store of 2023 in the Twin Ports by the Duluth Reader, has in stock thousands of new and used vinyl records, from classic rock to punk, grunge, and metal, to hip-hop, rap, and jazz, reggae, and dub. Thousands of books, CDs, DVDs, Blu-ray, and VHS. Also a large selection of cassettes, comic books, and music magazines. Stop in and see them at 1814 West Superior Street in the friendly Lincoln Park Craft District. Open 9 to 7, 7 days a week.
I'm Sydney, and I had Z LASIK at Weiss Eye Center. Oh, man. Camping and like being able to look up at the stars, or like wake up to the stars or wake up to the sun and not have to kind of fumble around to see where my glasses are. So I'm looking forward to that eventually. It's like getting out and enjoying nature with sort of no barrier. Oh, the staff were really great. Yeah, it was really, always felt pretty taken care of, and very friendly staff, and they were answering my questions even if they were like really, really trivial. It's something that you got to have like sort of a bit of trust in this doctor.
Weiss Eye Center is the only clinic to offer blade-free Z LASIK in the Northland. To find out more and to arrange your free consultation, call 218-625-1917 today, or visit weisseyecenter.com for more information. Weiss Eye Center. See the best.
If you're looking for a great hang in downtown Duluth, I highly suggest Carmody's Irish Pub. They're located at 308 East Superior Street, open Tuesday through Sunday. The host and hostess are Eddie and Liz. Eddie is a retired Chicago cop. If he happens to be in the club when you're there, talk to him. He's got more stories than I do. They've also got a great jam session every Tuesday night from 8 to 11 with Bruce Woodman. So if you're a musician, tried and true, that is out there playing and just want to go try out some new stuff, go down and hang out with Bruce and the crew. Or if you're just up and coming, bring your horn or your stringed instrument or just want to sing, go sit in with Bruce Woodman every Tuesday night at Carmody's Pub, 308 East Superior Street.
Every day deserves a superior beer. Earth Rider Brewery's decorated brewers hand-select hops that lend citrus notes to the crisp and easy-drinking Superior Pale Ale. Visit Earth Rider Brewery's Cedar Lounge Tap Room on the Working Harbor in Superior for their award-winning flagship and seasonal brews on tap and to go. To find out much more about Earth Rider Brewery events, join the mailing list and locate Earth Rider beer near you at earthrider.beer. Hold fast.
All right, lots of stuff going on over at the Cedar Lounge all the time. Tonight they got a great hip-hop show with High and Low. They're from Fargo. A great, this is one of the best names I've heard in a long time, Socktopus. They're from Minneapolis. And then Sea Silence, doors at 7:30. 8 o'clock show at the Cedar Lounge over there in Souptown. Cedar Lounge Industry Nights on Mondays. If you work in, you serve, you bartender, server, you just haul beer around and you work in the industry, $4 pints from open to close over there at the Cedar Lounge. And next Friday, November 8th, a guy that I really enjoy, songwriter, great sense of humor, playing a no-cover show at the Cedar Lounge, Mississippi Mike. He was just on Stars Over the Prairie a few weeks ago. Well, we're having fun. We're doing some music today and some politics. And we have a man that I know as primarily as an author. He's written several books. He's a retired judge. And for some reason, he must have lost a bet and decided to get out of retirement and run for office. But my friend Mark Munger is here. He is running for Minnesota House Rep in District 3B. It's good to see you, Mark, and belated happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you, Paul.
Thank you, man.
Apart, I think.
We're Scorpio brothers.
Yeah.
So tell us, I've got a bunch of questions because, you know, you're friends with my sister Kathy.
Yep.
And I've got a lot of questions, but everywhere I drive around Duluth when I'm doing this and that, Munger Road, Munger Trail, Munger this, Munger that. You come from a long family of Duluthians, correct?
Well, Yes and no. So my Uncle Willard was in the state house.
Everybody knew Willard.
43 years. He came here in 1935. He came from Otter Tail County. So he was the first of my direct Munger family to come over here. Then his dad, my grandfather, followed. My dad, who was in 10th grade at Fergus Falls High School, followed. He ended up going to Denfeld. My mom went to Denfeld. I'm a Denfeld kid. All my siblings are Denfeld kids. So the Munger that you see on the Munger Trail is Willard. That's my uncle. The other Mungers that you see around town are distantly related. They relate to Roger Munger, who was an entrepreneur, a timber baron, back in like the 1870s, 1880s. And he had a brother, Gilbert, who was a famous landscape painter, and you can actually see his paintings at the Tweed. So that Munger is related, but very distantly.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about Willard, because he was a real character. You wrote a big book about him.
Did.
A real environmentalist.
I'll never write
yourself.
I'll never write another biography either after that. It took me 6 years, and I did 23 interviews. No, Willard was, he was the guy. He was called Mr. Environment because every conservation-related law that was passed in the state of Minnesota from his first year in office, 1954, until he died in office in 1999, same year I was first elected judge. We were on the ballot together, actually. Every single piece of legislation in conservation, environment, etc., was penned by Willard Munger. I went through his DNR committee in the state house. He was, he owned a little motel out in West Duluth that's still there.
Yeah.
The Willard Munger Inn. My cousin Jeff would be his grandson, runs it and owns it. You'll see two big Munger signs there, even though that's not my district. Kind of in keeping with the legacy. So he was my mentor. I worked at the motel when I was in high school. I'd take my bike from, I was probably a junior in high school when I first started working for him. I'd take my bike from the motel to Denfeld for class and then come back and work at night. And he was a great guy. Great guy.
Before we get into politics, you were part of a very scary event up in, I believe, Grand Marais, the courtroom.
Correct.
Tell us what happened. Somebody came in with a gun.
So what happened was it was a long, convoluted story. I'll spare the listeners. But what happened was a gentleman by the name of Daniel Schlins was convicted in front of me in a jury trial of criminal sexual conduct with an underage girl. He was in his 40s. He was a boxer from Duluth, and this relationship went on for a while, and ultimately he was convicted of criminal sexual conduct because he had spent basically all of his time pre-trial in custody for various reasons, and it's very convoluted, so I won't go into it. But he didn't have any time really left to go to prison. But what it did, a conviction meant he was going to be a registered sex offender.
Right.
And so I did not take him into custody, and there was not a lot of strenuous objection from the county attorney, given the fact he'd done most of his time already. I think he had maybe 30 days or less left. Well, he took exception to having to be a registered sex offender, and as I was talking to the jury in the courtroom, and my bailiff Gary was there, he went out to his car, got a handgun, came back in, and shot the father of the young lady who was involved in the case. The father never testified. Mom testified. In fact, Dad was just there by happenstance to talk to the county attorney. Then he shot the county attorney, and Molly Hicken, who was the assistant county attorney who helped try that case, actually ended up wrestling the gun away from him with the assistance of Gary, the security officer. But I got the jurors out of there. There were 6 shots. You knew immediately that somebody had a gun in the courtroom or courthouse. You don't know if there's more than one shooter, multiple shooters. And so I got the jury secured. I went and got law enforcement help. By the time I was able to get to law enforcement, State Patrol was already on the scene and wrestling with him to take him into custody. So ultimately, he died. Schlins died in custody of the St. Louis County Jail.
What did he die from?
Respiratory failure.
Wow.
And later on, sadly, the county attorney who was involved in that case it came out that he was involved in the same kind of conduct as Schlins, and he ended up being disbarred. So he went through a trial, was disbarred. It was the whole thing was sad, terrible, terrific, horrific. I would not want anybody to go through a public shooting like that. And I was not being shot at, but I was there.
Yeah. Well, I thanks for telling us that story. It just goes to show you you're really not safe anywhere anymore, unfortunately. But you are a hunter. You're a lifelong hunter. You know, you and I are friends. I watched your Facebook posts, and so you've got a. I partridge hunt, not every year, but I own a gun. Talk about your stance, number one, on the Second Amendment, and guns like the AR-15s.
Well, I'm a lifelong gun owner, hunter. I belong to the Rough Grouse Society, Pheasants Forever, Ducks Unlimited. I've been hunting since I was 12 years old. I went through gun safety as a Boy Scout. I'm an Eagle Scout. I was in the United States Army Reserve, honorably discharged. So I've been around firearms my whole life. It's been part of my culture, just like you. I'm a Northeast Minnesota boy from day one, basically. I was born in St. Paul, but that was just by happenstance. So, I don't want to infringe on anyone's right to be able to enjoy our out of doors and our heritage. I do have a question about why we have ARs on the streets. I do have a question about why we have high-capacity magazines. I'm not sure what the Minnesota legislature can do about that, given the makeup of our current United States Supreme Court. But at least I'm willing to talk about those issues with not only citizens, gun owners, police officers, and anyone who wants to come and talk to me about that issue. I'm more than open to talking about it, and we'll see what we can do. I mean, school shootings, let's face it, you don't see people walking into a school shooting with a .22 rifle. That just doesn't happen. It's an AR. It's a multiple magazine handgun. There's some things maybe we can do, maybe we can't, but at least I'm willing to talk about it.
I'm really tempted to get off Twitter/X the day after the election because it's gotten so polluted with insanity and conspiracy theorists and the rest. But there's an ad out there that paint you as just a far-left lunatic.
Yeah.
Talk about how you respond to this stuff.
Really, you don't respond to it. I mean, it's based upon some erroneous reporting and non-factual opinions from Alpha News, which, if anybody, I know I took a little hit on Neil's program on Monday for coming down on Alpha News. Well, I'm sorry. Alpha News is not a news source.
Right.
MSNBC is not a news source on the other side of things, right? These are opinion-based publications or productions. And so what I've chosen to do is basically take the high ground and say, you know what? People who know me, who know my career as a prosecutor and a judge over 40 years, they know it's nonsense. And just leave it at that.
Yeah, sometimes it's best just to leave those things alone. Now, where exactly 3B? What exactly territory does that cover?
3B is a really interesting district. So I live in Friedenberg Township, which is Island Lake, Fish Lake area. I've been there for 40 years. My wife, Renee, and I have been married 46 years. All four of our kids went through the Hermantown school system, all boys. They're all adults now, 3 of them married, 1 still living with me and working a full-time job.
Hermantown seems like it's the hot new place.
Oh, yeah. There's
my sister Kathy and her husband Al just bought a place in Hermantown.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've been just since I moved to Duluth 3.5 years ago. I mean, it's like there's a lot of cool things going on in Hermantown.
And so, 3B is the only part of Duluth that's in 3B is Gary, New Duluth, Fond du Lac, so far west Duluth, and then it wraps to Proctor, Hermantown, City of Rice Lake, 2 harbors, and then 14 townships going all the way up just about to Hoyt Lakes. So you get up past Whiteface, the unorganized portion of Whiteface Township, and that's the furthermost reaches of the district. So it gets really sparsely populated. It touches on the mining district, obviously, and so that's one of the reasons I've made it very clear that I'm not a prove-it-first guy, right? I want mining done responsibly, and I'm willing to look at projects. I'm not willing to jeopardize the boundary waters, but I'm willing to look at other projects like what used to be Polymet, which is now New Range, take a look at it, look at the science behind it, and make decisions based upon facts and evidence and not a bunch of hyperbole.
Right. Well, speaking of which, I was a huge fan. I almost had a chance when he was still alive. Grant Merritt went to.
Oh, sure.
We both went to the Hennepin Methodist Church in Minneapolis, and so I'd meet him. He used to, he worked Sundays and hand out the things and the programs, and he told me Miles Lord, I believe, was in Shakopee at a nursing home, and I really wanted to go down. Now Grant's not with us anymore, but did you ever get a chance to meet the great Miles Lord?
I had cases in front of the great Miles Lord when he was a federal district court judge, and in fact, you'll love it. I'm backed by virtually every union in northeast Minnesota. There may be a couple out there that are outliers, but virtually every union is behind me. And I had a case that I was actually suing the sheet metal workers union. In another case, I was suing the bakers union on behalf of union members who didn't feel they were being represented fairly with respect to seniority and other issues. In both cases, Miles sent me out the door pretty quickly. He didn't want anybody impinging or impugning upon the union. So, yeah, I had a couple of cases with him, and he was a friend of my father, Harry, who was a lawyer here in town for 50-plus years, who's passed as well. But, yeah, no, I knew Miles. The last time I bumped into him was, gosh, got to be 25 years ago, on the steps of the Detroit Lakes Courthouse. He was there as a federal judge, and I was there trying a case as a lawyer. So it was before I was a judge, but I was trying a jury trial, and so we chatted on the courthouse steps. Yeah.
Well, and I always, I believe he was from, I'm not sure exactly, the Beauvais area, one of those little townships up there. And he always described myself, and now I describe myself as an Iron Range Prairie populist.
Sure.
But, yeah, loved Miles Lord. So what, let's talk about some of your other issues that you're running on as State House Rep for District 3B. Let's talk about your thoughts about reproductive freedom and health care.
Well, that's a huge difference between my side of the aisle and the other side of the aisle. What's happened once Roe v. Wade was taken away via the Dobbs decision from the United States Supreme Court, you've seen this movement across the country in very red places like Ohio and Kansas, where constitutional amendments have been put on the ballot with the belief by the other side of the aisle that these were going to get defeated. And lo and behold, they're passing.
Right.
Reproductive freedoms are being instituted in the state constitutions, right? And all of a sudden you hear from the party that for 50 years wanted to make Roe v. Wade go away, and from their candidate who said, he was very proud of getting rid of Roe v. Wade via the Dobbs decision, all of a sudden you'll hear things like out of my opponent at a public forum, oh, I support Roe v. Wade. No, you don't.
Right.
Look at the votes.
Right.
I mean, this isn't rocket science here. You can go look at the public record and look at the votes. And so I am 100% behind a woman's right to choose. And I say that not glibly, but also because, this is the lawyer mind in my head talking. Behind Roe is the doctrine of privacy. That's what people forget. That underpins reproductive freedom in terms of birth control with the Griswold decision. That underpins the right to interracial marriage, the Love decision, and a bunch of other decisions that all are based upon the right of privacy. Okay? That's what Roe was founded upon. And the problem is, once you attack Roe with respect to the right of privacy, you've now opened the door to attacks on all these other fundamental rights that we've enjoyed for 60, 70, 80 years based upon the right of privacy. The originalists that sit on the Supreme Court, there's no right of privacy written into the Constitution. It's called precedent, right? We've lived with this. This has been our society for 70, 80 years. You're going to go backwards? I heard Jen Schultz just a few minutes ago. I agree with Jen. We can't go back.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. And the whole thing about banning birth control, that one blows my mind. I mean, it's, there's such a thing as recreational sex to be enjoyed between couples, married couples, whatever. People are doing that. And it's kind of, what I look at that is, it's kind of like in that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You know, it's not a bad way to enjoy one's life, is to have a healthy sex life. And if they want, you can't be you can't be pro-life if you want to take away contraception, which is one of the things that's one of the biggest things stopping abortions is contraception.
Sure. And the last thing we want, at least I want, and I think most women in America want, is to have Ted Cruz or Clarence Thomas telling us what we can do in the privacy of our doctor's office, in the privacy of our confessional, in the privacy of our own bedrooms. I mean, the government has no role in this.
How has... So you retired there for a year or two, Mark Munger, and now you're campaigning again. I was telling Jen, and my father was a politician. I don't know if you ever got a chance to meet Elder Metsa, but I know how hard politicians work, all the time.
Sure.
Not just during the campaign season, but it's a lot of work, isn't it?
Well, and I've never been a politician, right? So I served as a private lawyer and prosecutor for 18 years, and then I was on the bench for 23 years with your buddy Pagliacetti, former drummer, I think. Isn't he your former drummer?
First drummer on the Positive Reaction.
Well, his mom is a huge supporter, so if Loretta's listening, here we go. And his sister Sandy, too, who's married to my good friend Tim Scott. But
I know the whole... The Pagliacettis and Metzas go back
to the
beginning of time.
Anyway, back to your question. I've not been in office, so that's part of what I'm being hit with is the things that the DFL may have done in 2023 and 2024. They're saying he's done these things. I haven't done anything. I haven't been there. I haven't voted on one thing yet. Right? I've been candid and open and honest when people ask me about questions about particular issues, and I give them my best response. But until I'm an evidence-based guy, right? That's coming from the legal side of me, and also the writer, the researcher, right? I want to see things in front of me before I say yes or no to something.
We just got a few minutes left with Mark Munger. The other thing that I really admire about you, Mark, is you're a prolific author, and you also... I have my own record label. You have your own publishing house, Cloquet River Press. How many books have you written?
14.
Wow.
I'm working on number 15, which is World War II saga, family saga, set in Slovenia, which is my heritage. That's my mom's side, Kobe, K-O-B-E, from the range, from Aurora and Virginia. The Colbys are all relatives. And the Sales, S-A-L-E, in Aurora. So I've always been interested in my grandfather, Ivan Kobe's heritage and where he came from. He was the only one of my 4 grandparents that came on the boat from the old country when it was part of Austro-Hungary back in, I think, 1902, 1903. So that's what I'm working on now. But, it's a great diversion. It makes you use, music for you. And you've written some fabulous stuff, too. I mean, Blue Guitar Highway, you let me pre-read that, and I was so pleased to be able to do that and give you some tips or some ideas or whatever.
You certainly did.
And, and so it's fun. The arts is a great adjunct to some other vocation. I love it. It's been your vocation, but for me, being in the law, it makes me use the other half of my brain, right? The creative half.
What you just wrote one of your last books was a Finnish tome, and what's your connection with my part of the globe here with my my Finnish roots?
So I'm not Finnish. I'm like 3% Norwegian if you believe 23andMe. So I'm not Scandinavian at all. I grew up with a lot of Finns. I went to Denfeld with a number of 100% Finns, and I spent a lot of time on the old Finnish farmsteads up in Palo, Markham area. And I just was intrigued, when I found the story of Olli Kinkinen, who was lynched here in Duluth in 1918 as a Finn. I was intrigued by that murder mystery, and so I started
tell the
working
people
on
out there. We've got a few minutes left. Tell them about the Olli.
So Olli was just kind of a Finnish everyman. He was in his early 30s. He may or may not have had a brother, no other family. He was a single man. He was a dock worker. He was a miner. He was a logger, and apparently he said out loud to people, I don't want to become an American citizen. Why? Because it'll mean I'll get drafted. World War I was going on at the time. Horrific battles, trench warfare, all of that other stuff. And so many of those single Finnish men left the old country to get away from the Russian Tsar and get away from the Russian army and being impressed into a crazy war, World War I being that war. And so somebody took exception to the fact he said he didn't want to become an American citizen and take his second papers. They dragged him out of his boarding house in Canal Park, and 3 weeks later they found him hanging from a tree in Leicester Park. He'd been lynched.
Wow.
Now, the police, of course, in their cleverness, said, no, we think he hung himself because he was despondent over being tarred.
Right.
I don't quite buy that story. So that was Suomalaiset, my first book, and then there's Sukalaiset, which comes after that, and then Kutima, Homeland, which is the final. It's my finished trilogy, and I've had a lot of fun doing it. I've been to Finland with it. I've met Finnish friends. It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
You did FinFest, I'm sure, right?
All the time, yeah. Every Finnish festival. I've been over to Hancock a number of times at the college, which no longer exists, sadly, but also the bookstore over there, Northwind Books. Yeah.
Do you know my buddy? He's on the front page of the Duluth Newspaper, Steve Sokoloff.
I absolutely know Steve.
He's the pride of Palo.
I love Steve.
Hey, go out there and vote your conscience, but consider my friend Mark Munger. Good luck with everything.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Stars Over the Prairie. We're here every week on KDAL, 10 a.m. to noon. Podcast at www.wkdal610.com. I usually play Sunday afternoons at Carmody's Pub with Paul Metsa, the Tiltown Titans. We're taking this Sunday off because we had our big bash last night, but we'll be back the week after this. Tell your friends if you're got something to advertise, get a hold of me at paul@paulmetsa.com. We have a committed audience here on Stars Over the Prairie. If you want to find my books or records, either see me in person or go to paulmetsa.com. Thanks for listening, and like my father used to tell me, remember to be kind and make someone happy. Have a beautiful weekend, everybody.
Twins Baseball, KDAL.